based on the current state of the law, you may not have the exceptions that you have this year available to you. There are things being done that may eliminate those. And if you are limited strictly to the index, you're going to be looking, by definition, at increases in your budget that are not going to be coverable by a tax increase. So that's one thing that I think you should consider. The other thing is that standard practices in school districts, business policies, call for a best practice of a 5% capital surplus. And the 5% with regard to our budget at $26 million would be $1.3 million. So I know the numbers you mentioned sound like a lot, but in terms of a budget of $26 million, the accounting practices that are favored with regard to school districts do call for something in that area. I'm just asking you to be cautious about what you may find legally next year in terms of your ability to respond to any increased costs. And by definition, with the teacher's contracts, which is your highest expenditure, you have built-in increases in that. And PSERS, of course, as Mr. Tantlinger has projected, are scheduled to go up. It is possible that Mr. Beam is right and some relief will be given, but it's not guaranteed at this point. So I would just urge caution with regard to this whole financial situation.
I have said many times, I'm not in favor of raising taxes unless I think that it's absolutely necessary for the education of the children of the school district. I have gone on record many times in all of our budget discussions over the last several months. We have cut approximately $2.9 million out of our budget. We have made sacrifices that I think will impact the academic programs as well. I listened, Bruce, to your comments about some of the other school districts and what they may or may not be doing as far as increases, but those same districts are sitting on multi-million-dollar fund balances. We don't have a multi-million-dollar fund balance. When we sat here at this same time last year, we thought that we would have a $1.2 million fund balance at the end of this year. And the reality of it is we're looking at about a $300,000 fund balance. I won't repeat the things that I've said earlier regarding my personal belief on exceptions and what I think will happen to those in the future. But I also believe that we need to make the decisions that we think are in the best interests of the students in the school district.
I totally agree with what Buzzy has just said. Our administrators have sat here, have been through meeting after meeting after meeting, cutting this budget to the point that we can increase by 4 mills and still have a district that we can be proud of. It really scares me to think that if we don't pass the budget by 4 mills, that what we may be facing next year. As we've seen from previous years, from last year, for instance, when you think that you're going to have a $1.2 million surplus and you end up with what we're faced with today, I think that we have to be prudent. I think that we have to think about the children and the education that we want to give them. And that's the most important thing to me. The things that we sit up here and decide are affecting these kids, and it's very, very important to me that we provide the very best education that we can. And to me, by passing this 4 mills increase, while I don't like to increase taxes, is still the best thing for this district.
Robert.
For the last 2 years, I preached about the increase in the retirement for cost and the health care, and I proposed a minimum increase for the last 2 years of a million and a half, and this board chose not to increase taxes for the past 4 years. Unfortunately, if we would have increased them a mill in the previous 2 years, we would be better off, based on the fact that our surplus budget is minimal. And I believe Mr. Marnell, even with this 4 mil, that would still only give us 2.6% of the 5% that the state, of the minimum state encourages us to carry. I don't like tax increases, but there comes a point where we have to make a decision to run this school district. It's unfair. The state has not given us the budget. We don't know what the money's coming in. We have to make a decision based on the numbers we have right now, and they may change depending on how the state looks at it. But I think we just have to go so we can prepare for tomorrow and the next 2 years. Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Herb. Any further discussion? If not, Marnell, you do a roll call.
Yes. We're using the rolling roll call system, so our last vote started with Mr. Bean. This vote will start with Mr. Complot.
Yes.
Mrs. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
No.
Mrs. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. Tantlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Bean.
No. 5-2. Pass and motion carries. Necessary to have 5 votes for state budget, and that's been achieved. Okay, we're going to move on now to adjournment. I have a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.